Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Bits and Pieces. My name is Bill Morse, and we do this program on a weekly basis. We, as the title conveys, the premise of this program is different, bits and pieces. Whatever I think may be of interest to you or whatever I think might be worth sharing. Wednesday of last week was the first day of school, so I thought we would have something school-related. Also, this first day of school resonates with me and everyone who's a teacher or was a former teacher. The shortness of the summer break, the fact that come the 1st of August, you're already prepping to go back to school, and how after leaving public education, after about a year or so, you get very used to the freedom and the lack of preparation that you have to do on a Sunday or during the summer break. So along those lines, I thought we would look at something I came across at a yard sale on Wells Street this past Labor Day weekend. It's a book, and it's a book about someone who taught, and his name is well known if you're a reader of fiction. At least it's well known for the novel Angela's Ashes, which I believe came out in the 90s. Angela's Ashes. It's about growing up, I'd say in the 30s in Ireland, in relative poverty. Poverty whereby your children don't always have a pair of shoes and are not always scrubbed squeaky clean and have new clothes on. His name is Frank McCourt, and in kind of a nod to school teachers, at least school teachers over the last 2 centuries, I'm going to use a piece of chalk which just broke broke twice because it's too long. His name is Frank McCourt. And this chalkboard has seen better days, and the chalk is just broken again. Probably why they have smart boards or why they have whiteboards with markers. Anyway, if you can read that, his name is Frank McCourt, and it looks like it was written 200 years ago. Anyway, Frank McCourt is his name. The name of the book, I don't have an eraser, so my hand is the eraser. The name of the book is Teacher Man. Wow, I've got this down because I'm using a shorter piece of chalk. I've forgotten how to use chalk. And I'm writing on at an angle, so it's not breaking, it's right in my fingers. Teacher Man. And there it is. Name of the book. Name of the, it's like memoirs. It's not fiction. These are his actual experiences. Teacher Man. Okay, Teacher Man. And what I was going to do, and this is where the radio part of the program kicks in, is I was just going to read the prologue of the book, maybe a couple of comments. And I have never read Angela's Ashes. Again, I've heard of it. When it came out in the 90s, I was involved doing other things and not always reading that much, although I do enjoy reading, especially fiction, good fiction. his memoirs or his ponderings or his thoughts on writing and teaching, I thought were very well expressed and resonated with me, even though I'm hardly a writer. And some people, I know one principal who would say that I'm hardly a teacher. But fortunately, that was in the minority, and I was able to keep my job. So I've got my glasses on, and we're just going to read a couple of pages from the prologue. The prologue is short, only 3 pages, and I just thought the way he hits on writing and how writing came from his teaching experience, and how teaching is still an undervalued profession. It is a profession, it's a vocation, kind of like the priesthood, because you have to give 100%. If you don't give 100%, your students will pick up on that. If your soul doesn't go into, your spirit doesn't go into what you're teaching, students pick up on that very quickly. They know when you're ad-libbing, when you're faking, when you're being less than, when you're being disingenuous. So it's very interesting calling, and I believe it is a calling, vocation, as I said. And we're just going to read a couple of pages, the prologue. And this is from Teacher Man. And I'm sure you can still get a paper-bound copy of this book. Anyway, prologue. This is Frank McCourt. If I knew anything about Sigmund Freud and psychoanalyst, I'd be able to trace all my troubles to my miserable childhood in Ireland. That miserable childhood deprived me of self-esteem, triggered spasms of self-pity, paralyzed my emotions, made me cranky, envious, disrespectful of authority. Well, that's still there. Retarded my development, crippled my doings with the opposite sex, kept me from rising in the world, and made me unfit almost for human society. How I became a teacher at all and remained one is a miracle, and I have to give myself props. That was me. Props for surviving all those years in the classrooms of New York. New York being New York City, which actually is where I started teaching. So anyway, some resonance here. There should be a medal for people who survive miserable childhoods and become teachers. And I should be first in line for the medal, and whatever bars might be appended or added on for ensuing miseries. I could lay blame. The miserable childhood doesn't simply happen, it is brought about. There are dark forces. If I am to lay blame, it is in the spirit of forgiveness. Therefore, I forgive the following people: Pope Pius VII, the English in general who occupied Ireland for hundreds of years, and King George VI in particular, Cardinal McCrory, who ruled Ireland when I was a child. Remember, Ireland is a very Catholic country. St. Patrick, the snakes and all. Who ruled Ireland when I was a child. The Bishop of Limerick, who seemed to think everything was sinful. Eamon de Valera, former Prime Minister and President of Ireland. Mr. de Valera was a half-Spanish Gaelic fanatic. Spanish onion in an Irish stew. That's a good analogy. Who directed teachers all over Ireland to beat the native tongue into us and natural curiosity out of us. I think that's an issue that's still prevalent today. Is very often in schools we actually stymie, or we actually thwart the intellectual curiosity, or the curiosity that children come into with. No questions, this is the way it is. There's no debate, no discussion. I've seen the cartoons of a child with a funnel over his head and the teacher just pouring in bits of knowledge, not necessarily wisdom. He caused us hours of misery. He was aloof and indifferent to the black and blue welts raised by schoolmaster sticks on various parts of our young bodies. Well, we don't do that anymore. I forgive also the priest who drove me from the confessional when I admitted to sins of self-abuse and self-pollution and penny thieveries from my mother's purse. Well, there you describe maybe 90% of all 12, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds in this country or in Ireland. He said I did not show a proper spirit of repentance, especially in the matter of the flesh. Well, the flesh, that's when you're 13, 14, 12, even younger. It's about the flesh. And even though he had hit that nail right on the head, his refusal to grant me absolution put my soul in such peril that if I had been flattened by a truck outside the church, he would have been responsible for my eternal damnation. I forgive various bullying schoolmasters for pulling me out of my seat by the sideburns. I don't know, this must be later. For walloping me regularly with a stick, strap, and cane when I stumbled over answers in the catechism, or when in my head I couldn't divide 937 by 739. That's a good inverse of numbers there. I was told by my parents and other adults it was all for my own good. I forgive them for those whopping hypocrisies and wonder whether they are where they are at this moment. Where are they? Are they in heaven? Are they in hell? Are they in purgatory? And in parentheses, if it still exists. I can even forgive myself, though when I look back at various stages of my life, I groan. And I think we can all do that. What an ass. Ditto. What timidities. Ditto. What stupidities. Big ditto. What indecisions and flounderings. It's growing up. But then I take another look. I had spent childhood and adolescence examining my conscience and finding myself in a perpetual state of sin. Again, this resonates. I was raised also, I still consider myself a Catholic, but you learned about venial sins, which were the lighter ones, and mortal sins that would get you at the gates of Lucifer. So, and this bit about self-abuse, that was definitely a mortal sin. That was the training, the brainwashing, the conditioning, and it discouraged smugness, especially among the sinning class. Now I think it time to give myself credit for at least one virtue: doggedness, or persistence. Not as glamorous as ambition or talent or intellect or charm, but still the one thing that got me through the days and nights. F. Scott Fitzgerald said that American lives, there are no second acts. He simply did not live long enough, in my opinion. In my case, he was wrong. Second act. I think many of us experience a second act in our life when we get another chance. When I taught in New York City high schools for 30 years, that's a long time, 30 years teaching in a high school, urban high school, no one but my students paid me a scrap of attention. In the world outside the school, I was invisible. Then I wrote a book about my childhood and became Mick of the moment. A Mick is an Irish person, a Mick. I hoped the book would explain family history to McCourt children and grandchildren. I hoped it might sell a few hundred copies, and I might be invited to have discussions with book clubs. Instead, it jumped onto the bestseller list and was translated into 30 languages, and I was dazzled. The book, which is obviously Angela's Ashes, was my second act. In the world of books, I am a late bloomer, a Johnny-come-lately, new kid on the block. My first book, Angela's Ashes, was published in 1996 when I was 66. The second, Tis, in 1999 when I was 69. Now this book on teaching, Teacher Man, when was it published? 2005. 2005. So this story or these memories have just been out less than 20 years. Okay, cool. This was his third. Teacher Man. At that age, okay. My first book, Angela's Ashes, was published in 1996 when I was 66. The second, Tis, in 1999 when I was 69. At that age, it's a wonder I was able to lift the pen at all. New friends of mine, recently acquired because of my ascension to the bestseller lists, had published books in their 20s. So what took me so long? I was teaching. That's what took me so long. Not in college or university where you have all the time in the world for writing and other diversions, but in 4 different New York City public high schools. Incidentally, I have read novels about the lives of university professors where they seem to be so busy with adultery and academic infighting, you wonder where they found time to squeeze in a little teaching. Side note ended. When you teach 5 high school classes a day, 5 days a week, you're not inclined to go home to clear your head and fashion deathless prose. You're probably more inclined to have a little self-pollution. After a day of 5 classes, your head is filled with the clamor of the classroom. And that's very true. I remember you can't turn it off. It's not like a switch. You're still there and you're inside. I never expected Angela's Ashes to attract my attention, but when it hit the bestseller list, I became a media darling. I had my picture taken hundreds of times. I was a geriatric novelty with an Irish accent. I was interviewed for dozens of publications. I met governors, mayors, actors. I met the first President Bush and his son, the governor of Texas. I met President Clinton and Hillary Rodham Clinton. I met Gregory Peck. I met the Pope and kissed his ring. Sarah, Duchess of York, interviewed me. She said I was her first Pulitzer Prize winner. I said she was my first Duchess. She said, "Oh," and asked the cameraman, "Did you get that? Did you get that?" I was nominated for a Grammy for the spoken word and nearly met Elton John. People looked at me in a different way. They said, "Oh, you wrote that book. This way, Mr. McCourt." Or, "Is there anything you'd like?" Anything. A woman in a coffee shop squinted and said, "I've seen you on TV. You must be important. Who are you? Could I have your autograph?" I was listened to. I was asked for my opinion on Ireland, drinking, teeth, education, religion, adolescent anxiety, William Butler Yeats, and literature in general. What books are you reading this summer, Mr. McCourt? What books have you read this year? Catholicism, writing, hunger. I spoke to gatherings of dentists, lawyers, and of course, teachers. I traveled the world being Irish, being a teacher, an authority on the miseries of all kinds, a beacon of hope to senior citizens everywhere who wanted to tell their stories. There's a saying that there's a book in each of us if we just get down and dig and tell the truth about ourselves. It's a very hard thing to do. It's very hard to write down. It's even harder to share something like that. Hence, most of us do not write books. That made a movie. Hollywood made a movie of Angela's Ashes. No matter what you write in America, there is always the movie. You could write the Manhattan telephone directory and they'd say, so where is the movie? If I hadn't written Angela's Ashes, I would have died begging. Just one more year, God. Just one more year, because this book is the one thing I want to do in my life. What's left of it? I never dreamed it would be a bestseller. I hoped it would sit on booksellers' shelves while I lurked in the bookshop and watched beautiful women turn pages and shed the occasional tear. They'd buy the book, of course, take it home, loll on divans or sofas, and read my story while sipping herbal tea or fine sherry. They'd order copies for all their friends. I remember when I was living in New York, riding the subway, having this fantasy of seeing an attractive young lady reading a novel. And obviously the name of the author is on the cover. And hopefully they would not include a photograph of the author, because my fantasy is picking up or getting to meet this attractive young woman on the subway, posing as the author of the novel that she's reading. I think I did that maybe twice. I carried that through maybe 3 times. And fortunately, there were no photographs of the author in the paperback. But my performance wasn't as convincing as it needed to be. I think Frank McCourt would be much better at that. So, this is interesting. I had an English teacher, Miss Smith. I'm skipping maybe 2 paragraphs. I had an English teacher, Miss Smith, who really inspired me. I'll never forget dear old Miss Smith. She used to say that if she reached one child in her 40 years of teaching, 40 sounds like a sentence, prison sentence, doesn't it? Her 40 years of teaching, it would make it all worthwhile. She'd die happy with that one student. The inspiring English teacher then fades into gray shadows to eke out her days on a penny-pinching pension. Penny-pinching pension, PPP. This is in Ireland, of course. Dreaming of the one child she might have reached. My response, dream on, teacher. You will not be celebrated. No. Often the case here, too. You think, and he breaks here, you think you'll walk into the classroom, stand a moment, wait for silence, watch while they open notebooks and click pens, tell them your name, write it on the board, proceed to teach. That's the formula. Oh, and never smile. Don't smile. Practice your sour milk look. That's me. On your desk, you have the English course of study provided by the school. You'll teach spelling, vocabulary, grammar, reading comprehension, composition, and finally, literature. You can't wait to get to the literature. You'll have lively discussions about poems. This is this is part of the mindset that gets you in the classroom. Plays, or through the main entrance of the school. Plays, essays, novels, short stories. The hands of 170 students that you teach in one day will quiver in the air, and they'll call out, "Mr. McCourt, me, I want to say something." You hope they'll want to say something. You don't want them to sit gawking while you struggle to keep a lesson alive. That's funny. It's funny, and some may know why there's humor in that. You'll feast on the bodies of English and American literature. What a time you'll have. You can't wait to get to Shelley, Keats, Byron, and good old Walt Whitman. How many people in Camden, New Jersey even know who Walt Whitman is? Your classes will love all that romanticism and rebellion, all that defiance in the literature. You'll love it yourself because deep down and in your dreams, you're a wild romantic. You see yourself on the barricades during the French Revolution or something like that. Principals and other figures of authority passing in the hallways will hear sounds of excitement from your room. They'll peer through the door window and wonder at all the raised hands, the eagerness and excitement on the faces of those boys and girls, those plumbers, electricians, beauticians, carpenters, mechanics, typists, and machinists. You'll be nominated for awards. Teacher of the Year, Teacher of the Century. You'll be invited to Washington. Eisenhower will shake your hand. Well, let's say President Joe Biden will shake your hand. Let's update this. Newspapers will ask you, a mere teacher, for your opinion on education. This will be big news. A teacher asked for his opinion on education. Wow. They'll put you on television. Imagine that, a teacher on television. All right, well, you get where this is going. It's going to Hollywood, where you'll be flown, and they'll make a movie. All right? And I'm going to read the last sentence, and we'll close there. How it must feel, they would say, to wake up in the morning, to leap gladly from the bed, knowing that before you stretched a day in which you do God's work with the youth of America, content with your meager remuneration, with your earnings. Sorry, too many syllables for this guy. Your real too many same consonants. Your real reward, the glow of gratitude in the eager eyes of your students as they bear gifts from their grateful and admiring parents. Oh, this is good. Cookies, bread, homemade pasta, and the occasional bottle of wine from the backyard vineyards of Italian families. This must be in Little Italy. Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, which is now 1 block long, the Italian district. Or Mulberry Street in Manhattan, another Italian area, which is now, the names are Italian, but the landowners are now Chinese. Canal Street, Chinese population grew. Mulberry Street, Italian population left for New Jersey. The mothers and fathers of your 170 students, 170 a day, at McKee Vocational and Technical High School, borough of Staten Island in the city of New York. We're going to leave it there. I don't like reading so long, but I just thought this is very good material. I want to share it. It's well done, and there's a resonance. I'm enthused about what I'm reading. Hopefully you're enthused by what you hear. The actual day and what transpires will be next time we meet. What actually happens in the classroom, and how Frank McCourt, is able to overcome the challenges, but not in the way that's prescribed by a principal or by professors of education. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of Frank McCourt's Teacher Man. This the beginning of the school year 2023 into 2024. And thank you for tuning in. Have a good rest of the week. God bless. And if you see a teacher, retired or still in the saddles, then say thank you for what you're trying to do. Cheers.